keep in mind, we were a marketplace, and this is the beauty of the motto, is we didn't train anyone. There was no situation where we took a VA and said, we're going to teach you Amazon, we're going to teach you customer service. We were a marketplace for the top 1% of VAs and freelancers. You need to already have the skill, already have the experience.
Today, I'm talking to Nathan Hirsch. Nathan was one of the early people to leverage the Amazon platform to sell his own products. He grew that business to about $5 million in revenue, which is impressive anyway. But what's more impressive about the story is the way that he did it. He did it largely on the backbone of having a virtual assistant team as the only employment in the company. It was him and a bunch of virtual assistants. He realized that there was tremendous demand for understanding how to run a business that way, and he launched a marketplace called FreeUp, which went from 0 to 12 million inside about 4 years before he exited the company. There are lots of practical applications for this episode today. I personally love having in-house team, and I want as many W-2s to create community and culture inside the walls of EasyPay Direct or any other company I have as I can. That said, there is definitely a time and a place for virtual assistants. The question is, when is the time and place, and how do you execute it? This episode gets very tactical on how to get virtual assistants moving and when not to use them. I love talking about it because it's an area to learn and learn from somebody that's doing very well with it, and kind of dig into the details and ask really questions that I needed to know answers to. So I was scratching my own itch. I left with some takeaways. I trust you will too. Enjoy the episode. Nathan Hirsch, I appreciate you carving out time, man. It's good to get some time in here.
Yeah, glad we can make it work. We had some tech issues to start it off, but all smooth going forward.
Yes, I hope so. It reminds me of mid 2000s and dealing with downloadable video conferencing apps. Well, look, why don't we dive in? I want to, for people that don't know, just give a little backdrop on your story, and why don't we start there?
Yeah, so I'm a longtime entrepreneur. I've never had a real job outside some college internships and high school jobs. I started a textbook business out of my college dorm room and started competing with my school bookstore before getting a cease and desist from my school telling me to knock it off and stop competing with them. So that was my first glimpse into being an entrepreneur. And I had this Amazon account. This was 2008, 2009. Amazon was more of a bookstore. And I was selling all these books on Amazon, and I started experimenting with other products, came across baby products and home goods. If you can imagine me as a 20-year-old single college guy with more hair selling baby products on Amazon, that was me. And this was the wild, wild west of Amazon. I mean, timing was everything. And I was running a multi-million-dollar Amazon business out of my college frat house, making every good and bad decision that a young entrepreneur can make. And from there, I had to hire people. I really didn't have a choice. My business was growing. I couldn't do it all myself. And I started hiring a lot of college kids. My first hire was awesome. My business partner, Connor, we've been working together for 10 plus years. After that, it was a pure disaster, hiring college kids who were drinking on the job, smoking on the job. I had to knock in their dorm room to wake them up. And that got me into the wonderful world of virtual assistants and built up what I called my VA army to run my Amazon business. Started offering these VAs to other Amazon sellers as more and more people started to learn what being an Amazon seller really was. And that turned into my next business, the FreeUp Marketplace, platform for people to hire pre-vetted VAs and freelancers. And that was fun. It was my first B2B business. I got to learn a lot about partnerships and SEO and marketing and clients and all of that. And we scaled that to doing $12 million a year by year 4. We were acquired in 2019, which is a whole nother story we can dive into if you want. And now my partner and I are focused on building a portfolio of boring companies that help other entrepreneurs. We have Outsource School that teaches people our hiring systems so they can just plug into their business to hire really good talent and keep them around. And we have 2 bookkeeping brands, Ecom Balance and Accounts Balance, one for e-commerce sellers, one for non-e-commerce and B2B companies. And we've got other ideas in the pipeline too. So longtime entrepreneur, always love just building companies. And that's a little bit about me.
I dig it. Okay, well, let's back out of let's talk let's talk college bookstore days because there's a first of all that's hilarious. I love the idea of competing with your college bookstore and getting slapped on the wrist for it. Um, but 2008, as you mentioned, you called it the wild wild west of Amazon. That was pre FBA, right? That was before Amazon started doing this fulfilled by Amazon program, which for those that don't know is really one of the huge levers that Amazon had. They allowed external sellers to sell on their platform, and they would do all the delivery for them. Um, what? How did that business go? Because the transition to free up was much later than that, right? So, how long did you do that, and what was kind of the scale and scope of that?
Yeah, so we sold on Amazon for about 6, 7 years. We sold 25 million over that time. We peaked at around $5, $6 million a year. And at the beginning, we thought we were going to take down Amazon. And by the end, Amazon had changed a lot of their algorithms and had made it harder. And we were still running it, but it wasn't much fun. We were just selling other people's products and really at the mercy of Amazon and their changes. But the whole idea came from drop shipping, which I didn't even know it was called drop shipping until years later. In my mind, I said, hey, I don't have money to buy inventory. I don't have any place to store inventory. I was living in my dorm room at the time, and there's all these US manufacturers that have products and they didn't know anything about e-commerce. So I started off just going to this website, slickdeals.com, and they had a deal of the day. And whatever the deals of the day were, I would post them on Amazon and sell it and just buy them on Slick Deals and get them shipped to the customer and pocket the difference. And then I started going around Slick Deals to the actual manufacturers of these products and said, hey, I can get you additional sales. I'm good at getting sales on Amazon. Really, back then, Amazon, it was just list a product and it sold. We weren't really doing anything. There was no PPC at the time or anything like that. And they kept my credit card on file. Whenever we got an order, we would email it to them. They would ship it. We'd track it on our side. And it was a lot of manual work because there wasn't that much software back then. So we had VAs that would fulfill the order, send it over to the manufacturer, track the shipping, make sure it got there, ask the customer for feedback, edit the listings if the pricing changed or it went out of stock before it sold. And that was really the whole business. And we worked with 300 plus US manufacturers just drop shipping products. And over time, they slowly realized they didn't need me. They could just sell the product themselves on Amazon. But for the first 5 years, it was great.
I love it. I love the arbitrage. So that was sort of like I'm piecing together the timeline here. That was so not fully fulfilled by Amazon, but the opportunity to list products on Amazon. I mean, I guess it sounds like it is FBA, but just not in the same form that it is today.
We didn't do any FBA. The only time we do FBA is on returns, but we're not talking that many. So everything was drop ship, fulfilled by merchant. They'd place an order with us on Amazon. We'd reach out to our manufacturer, say, hey, ship it here. They would ship it, charge our credit card, and we would just pocket the difference and obviously have it marked up before we sold it.
So to you at the time, Amazon was really your traffic store.
Right. It was our sales channel. We experimented with other marketplaces as well, but nothing was even close to Amazon. This was their big boom of, right about then.
Sure. The one of the things that I'm always thinking about today, or very often thinking about, is your own ecom brand versus an Amazon store, right? Versus posting products on Amazon. At the time, and you use the term marketplace, which I want to dig into in a little bit here, but at the time, did it occur to you to do the ecom store, the independent? Did you go down that path? What were the ups or downs to that for you?
Yeah. So about year, maybe 4 or 5, we did want to launch our own store and we had a choice to make. We could either use Shopify, which was brand new at the time and they had a store ready to go, or we could hire developers to build our own store. And we chose the wrong one. We should have used Shopify. We invested a lot of time and money into having developers build it and tried to build out this drop shipping ecosystem. And at the same time, Amazon was making it harder and kind of hurting our core business. So we ended up scrapping that and wasting a year on that. Learned a lot on working with developers and even met our developer that we used on FreeUp and even Ecom Balance and Accounts Balance now. So it wasn't all for nothing, but that was definitely just a learning lesson there. But we never actually launched our own store that had any sales.
Yeah, we have. I mean, at Easy Pay Direct, we predominantly are working with people that have their own ecom brands, right? But a lot of them also do Amazon because there's so much traffic there. And as a consumer, I I very regularly look at somebody's ecom store and then look it up on Amazon just because
Right.
the checkout process is easier, right? Um, what so I find that kind of conundrum curious. And today it's different than it was then. But the other thing that I find curious is the decision to move. So you said at the peak you were doing, about 5-6 million a year. What in your head, what allowed you to say, hey, now is the time to shift? Because for a lot of people, there's this balance of, am I giving up, or is it time to close this business? And I think that's a struggle for a lot of entrepreneurs in general. Beyond a Million is brought to you by Easy Pay Direct. If you're an entrepreneur and you are still using a product like Stripe or PayPal to accept payments, it is time to find out why the largest names in your industry would never consider doing that. Check out easypaydirect.com/BAM to find out more.
Yeah, I think in the back of my mind, I always knew that this was a short-term cash grab. I didn't see that it was going to be there for forever. And we could kind of see the writing on the wall. I mean, when we started, I had to be one of the first 1,000, 5,000 Amazon sellers, something like that. And when I was telling people I was an Amazon seller, no one even knew what that was. They thought I was running a scam or something. And by year 4, there's all these Amazon courses and gurus and Facebook groups of Amazon sellers, and other people are trying to kind of copy everything that we're doing. And it's just becoming harder. And Amazon's starting to crack down on drop shipping as well. So we were making money, but it wasn't that much fun. We were just kind of waking up every day, crossing our fingers, hoping that we didn't get an email from Amazon. And meanwhile, we had all these great VAs and freelancers that we had taught e-commerce, or that just had e-commerce experience from other sellers. And we started networking with other e-commerce sellers, and they had run into the same issues that we had, hiring people that knew Amazon, knew e-commerce. And we essentially said, hey, we got these people ready to go. You tell me what you need, call me, email, text me, Skype me, I'll introduce you, and you just pay me and I'll pay them, and I'll take my cut, and I'll back you up in case anything goes wrong. If anyone quits, I'll cover replacement costs. I'll give you credit, whatever it is. And that started to take off. All of a sudden, people were referring other people to us. We got to launch our own website, which was a lot of fun, and have our own brand. Came up with the name Free Up with 3s. And yeah, so that started to surpass our Amazon business. And I remember we were splitting our time 50-50, but we were dreading the time we were spending on the Amazon business. It was not fun. We didn't want to do it anymore, but Free Up was exciting. We were meeting new people. We were growing quickly. We had our own brand. We were learning podcasts and my own personal brand, and all the stuff that went with that. So about year 2, we kind of said, hey, let's scrap the Amazon thing and focus all our attention on Free Up. And that was one of the best decisions we ever made.
And Free Up, correct me if I'm wrong, but in my poking around before this call, Free Up, year 1, you did $1 million, year 2, you did 5, year 3 was 9, year 4 was 12. Is that accurate?
Yeah, we grew very quick.
Yeah, those first 2 years in particular. So somewhere in the second year on your path of, I'm going to be 5X my second year, you said, what the fuck are we doing with the Amazon selling?
Right, exactly. And the margins were better. You didn't have to deal with Amazon. There was no threat of like just getting shut down or suspended overnight. It was a much easier business to go to bed at night with.
Okay, but here's the big question. Free Up ultimately, and maybe it transformed into this, and this is the story I want to hear, but creating a marketplace for anybody is a daunting task, or it seems to be, because it's the chicken and egg scenario, right? You need a whole bunch of resources, and you need a whole bunch of buyers, but you kind of need them at the same time. So how did you think about doing that, or did you think about doing it, or did it happen naturally, or what was the pivot point there?
Yeah, I mean, that is the hardest part of a marketplace. And I talk to people all the time. They're starting a marketplace, and I kind of give them that same thing. It's a chicken or the egg. It's tough because you don't want too many VAs or freelancers and not enough clients, because they'll leave, and vice versa. If you have clients with no VAs and freelancers, they're not going to work with you anyway. So the competitive advantage we had is we already had these VAs and freelancers from our Amazon business. And we had a team leader, Chicky Ann, who's my favorite VA ever, who knew a lot of people in the Philippines. And we moved her from running our Amazon business to being our head of recruitment. So we had these people ready to go. We gave all of them out to different e-commerce clients. We ran out of VAs and freelancers, and she helped us build this recruitment program. And just like we would market to clients, we had to spend equal amount of time marketing to VAs and freelancers. It got to the point where we were getting 1,000 applicants a week to get on the free app platform, and we would let in 1 out of every 100. We only wanted the best out of the best, and we were quick to kick people off. If you got bad reviews from a client, if you weren't communicating, if we had to chase you down in any way to find out what's going on or where a project is, you were gone and you were never getting another client from us again. And we set really clear expectations with anyone on the platform, but also built really good relationships with them. We wanted them to be super happy. We wanted to know everything that we could possibly do to make it good for them, just like it's good for the clients. And we built a lot of great relationships. Now, the other thing we did is we created a referral program from day one. So anyone you referred to FreeUp as a freelancer or a VA, you would get 50 cents for every hour that they would bill forever. So you would make money just by referring other people. And the same program on the client side, if you referred a client, you'd make money for every hour they billed forever. So that off the ground helped us get lots of referrals. If you're a freelancer and you're getting all these clients, you're going and you're posting on Facebook, hey, there's this awesome new marketplace. It's tough to get in, but if you get in, they'll have clients ready to go. And same thing on the client side. I remember someone calling me being like, hey, I'm in a conference in China and someone told me about FreeUp. I need a customer service VA. And in my mind, I'm thinking, I've never been to China. This is cool. People are talking about me in other places. So that was definitely a key to getting off the ground and balancing that out.
There were a lot of things that I think are takeaways there. One, obviously, was the referral program, right? The referral program sounds like it was let's ignore the fact that you had a magic person over there that was just grabbing other VAs that she knew or he knew. But the referral program, huge juice to getting those applications, getting a whole bunch of additional VAs to come in. And I think that applies to basically everybody when you look at recruiting. And that's whether you're recruiting your own staff members or you're looking for clients or partners. But it led to ultimately the ability to cut people quickly. So curating a good marketplace where essentially the product that entrepreneurs were getting, the VAs, was super, super high quality. That's a scary proposition for entrepreneurs. It's kind of like firing bad customers, right? They're bringing in revenue for you, and to cut the cord or to say, hey, you are not our ideal client is a very hard thing. But the resolution to doing that, what makes it easier is if you have so much volume that you don't even want to deal with the bad clients because you're going to make it up with the volume anyway.
Yeah, and I'm all about customer service in anything that I build, and I learned that from my internship at Firestone. So there'd be situations that, I mean, obviously you kick people off if they're getting bad reviews, but there's also situations where like a client's VA would quit, and we would pay the first 3 weeks of a new VA to keep the client around and make sure they get a replacement and make money afterwards. There's times where there's an issue where the client says one thing, the VA says one thing, the VA has great reviews from other clients, so you're not 100% sure who's right, who's wrong, and we would try to split it and get the middle. Or if it's a $500 refund, I'll pay a third, they pay a third, VA pays a third, and just creative ways to make sure everyone's happy and no one feels screwed over and people stay coming back. So the VA says, hey, FreeUp treated me well, I'm going to go do a great job and stay on the platform. And the client says, hey, Nate, I trust Nate. I know if there's an issue, he's going to work it out. I'm going to hire more VAs from him. So a lot of just great customer service, resolving things quickly, where we weren't just taking money out of people's pocket or saying, sorry, there's nothing we can do.
What you mentioned starting the marketplace with a narrow vertical. So it was VAs for Amazon sellers. Were the VAs open for other services at that point? Or, how wide was the net at that point for VAs and what they could do?
Yeah, so good question. To put it in perspective, so the first year was mostly Amazon sellers. Second year, we got into more like Shopify and eBay and other stuff. And then by year 3, it was marketing and all sorts of different verticals. So I mean, to start for Amazon, it was PPC because that was the hot topic then. It was brand new and there were very few PPC experts. I think at the time we were really the only people that offered good Amazon PPC people. Now there's a lot of agencies and stuff. Customer service, bookkeeping, data entry, listing products, graphic design, video editing. Those were probably the initial skill sets, although by year 2, we had morphed into a lot of other stuff.
And at the end,
Yeah, I mean everything from funnels to designing website to Facebook ads, Google ads, like you name it. We were in all sorts of stuff. We always stayed away from like anything sketchy. Like if it, even like drop shipping was becoming more sketchy by the end of it, so we would stay away from a lot of that stuff. Trying to think of what else was sketchy there, but like any MLM stuff, like we really wanted only legit services that. And I apologize if anyone listening to MLM. We just didn't want to take any risks with our business.
Yeah. Well, it's funny there. I mean, look, any industry or area, it's a range of quote unquote sketchiness. And without
100%.
question, there are certain industries that just lend themselves to more sketchiness. And now, like you said, drop shipping is one of them. But the devil's in the details, right? So how you drop ship makes a huge difference.
Right.
Drop shipping from China versus the US makes a huge difference.
I know a good one. Fake reviews, stuff like that. Like no one could hire my VAs to leave fake reviews on their Amazon product. Anything like that, we would stay away from.
Got it. So one of the questions that I think entrepreneurs have in general around VAs, and I want to talk mechanics of that business a little bit more, but tactically, screening for good VAs is tough. And this
Yes.
is true of any employee or any employee hire. One of the large challenges for things that I'm trying to get better at, but large challenges for me as a CEO, is the hiring process and effectively screening, combing through who it is, and then onboarding them and training them and all that whole thing. How do you think about screening VAs on the front end?
Yeah, so keep in mind we were a marketplace, and this is the beauty of the motto: is we didn't train anyone. There was no situation where we took a VA and said, we're going to teach you Amazon, we're going to teach you customer service. We were a marketplace for the top 1% of VAs and freelancers. You need to already have the skill, already had the experience. So for us, we always look for three things whenever we're hiring someone, and it's the same thing when we were vetting people again on the platform: skill, attitude, and communication. And skill's pretty straightforward. If you say you're good at Amazon PPC, you got to be good at Amazon PPC. You don't oversay what you're good at, and you're honest. And then for attitude and communication, those are super great as well. I mentioned that issues come up. Do you have the right attitude where you're like, hey, I'm going to make this client happy? Or do you have the attitude where you're like, hey, I did the work, the client's lying, pay me, I don't care about anything else. So we wanted people on the platform that had good attitudes, that were fair and reasonable, and that we could work with to make sure everyone's happy. And then communication was the fastest way to get kicked off of our platform. If we had to chase you in any way, if you weren't responding within a business day, stuff like that, you would get kicked off. So when we were vetting people, we had skill tests depending on what their skills were. If they were a writer, we'd look at samples, whatever. We do a one-on-one interview with them. Chicky Ann ran that and make sure that they have the skill, the attitude, and the communication, actually talk to them. And then we had expectations of the platform that we would give them, like I forget how many pages, like 5 pages long or something, 12 pages long. And then we'd test them on the expectations. So you have to respond within a business day at all times, or stuff like that we would test them on. So before we even let them on the platform, we tested their skill, we had met with them, and they had gone through our expectations. Very similar to the onboarding process we teach at Outsource School. And that way they knew the expectations up front. There was nothing hidden. Clients got the same experience no matter who they hired, even if they hired a writer versus a video editor versus a customer service rep. And we would hold people to those expectations going forward. And I mentioned we weren't training them. So once they were on the platform, clients would put in a request. The beauty of FreeUp is we connect them right away. They could get started. We've already vetted them. Interviews can be quick. And we weren't managing them at all. It's not like the VA would report to us. The client would be in charge of training and managing them and talking to the VA. We were there if even the smallest thing went wrong. If a VA didn't respond within a business day, they could reach out to our support team. We had their phone number, backup emergency contact, all that kind of stuff that we would jump in and make sure the client was taken care of. But it made us very scalable because it wasn't like we were running a big agency that we have all these projects that you need project managers to manage.
How did you screen for attitude on the front end? I think that's one of the toughest things, is to think about values. And you used attitude, which I like, but values are in the Venn diagram. There's an overlap there.
Right. So we have a very specific type of attitude that we look for. And a lot of these questions are in outsource school, but we want someone who's passionate about what they do. If they're a graphic designer, they love doing graphic design, just like I love being an entrepreneur. They love self-improvement and growth. They're always trying to learn. They're trying to read books. Or they're not saying, hey, I'm the best web developer out there. They're saying, hey, I'm good, but I'm always trying to get better. And a year from now, I'm going to be better. They care about something besides money. We all like money in some capacity, but that can't be your number one thing because you can't compete with other companies on money. There's always someone out there that can pay your people more than you can. So they have to care about self-improvement or stability or growth or becoming a leader down the line or buying into the company. And then the last thing is like buying into FreeUp. We wanted VAs and freelancers that love FreeUp. We didn't want to just be another platform that would that they can get a job to. Like no one's loyal to Upwork. If you get a client on Upwork, you're trying to get them off Upwork as quickly as possible to get the fees, to reduce the fees. We wanted people that wanted to stay on FreeUp and become friends and family with the other people on FreeUp. We had these big group chats of all the graphic designers and all the writers, and we wanted people that cared about that and valued community. It wasn't just a job board of them. So I agree, tough to vet for, but that's what we looked for. And we had a lot of questions that kind of dug into what someone was really about.
So from a marketplace perspective, uh, you know, obviously they're different, but a lot of the words that you're using in fundamental ideas apply to anybody creating any company, right?
Right.
You're talking about creating sort of an ethos inside of the marketplace for the VAs in the marketplace. What were the things that you did to build the marketplace to create the sense of family, community, stickiness there for the VAs?
Right. So, I mean, first of all, is communication. We kept people along for the ride. We told people we had build hours that by the time we sold it, we were billing 18,000 build hours a week. Well, that started off at 100 and went to 1,000, went to 5,000. So every week we would announce it and everyone would get on board and people wanted to break our build hours record. So we had all these VAs and freelancers who are making money off the platform, but also are following along with the journey. And we shared everything we were doing, good and bad. Hey, we're working on this project. Hey, here's the software issue we had. And so they felt like they were a part of it. They were a part of it. We would share the good, bad, and the ugly. And the second thing is just listening to feedback. We wanted to know, like, what do you like? What do you not like? People wanted a job board. We created a job board. They could see that we were acting on their feedback really quickly. And then the last thing is knowing that me and the rest of the team had their back. So when a client issue did come up and a client was being sketchy with them, we had a client who like sexually harassed one of our VAs, or like there's random, like this didn't happen a lot, but over 4 years, stuff happens. We would make sure the VA was taken care of. Hey, we blocked that client. You get an apology from us. We paid you something. We help you get a new client. Like that's the kind of things that people remember. And again, not all issues are black and white, that it's the VA's fault or the client's fault. So people after a while knew that we had their back. We weren't just saying, hey, like client's always right or something, even though we make sure the client was happy. So combination, getting them to buy in, communication, listening to their feedback, and treating them well when stuff just happens, because stuff happens in business.
So obviously you're a proponent of VAs. Inside, and it makes sense with the story that you have in your journey through selling on Amazon, leveraging VAs for that. While you were building FreeUp, what was the makeup of your own team? How many full-time employees did you have internally, and how many VAs were you utilizing to execute that?
Yeah, we actually have a case study. If someone goes to outsourceschool.com/case study, or just go to Outsource School, scroll down on the bottom, you can grab it, and it shows the exact hires we made year 1 through 4. By the time we sold it, we had 30 full-time VAs in the Philippines running everything from customer service to hopping on sales calls to recruitment to matching what we call tickets, matching the jobs that came in to the freelancers. And we had no US employees. So when we sold it, we were doing $12 million a year, no office, no US employees, 30 VAs in the Philippines running all aspects of the company. We had thousands of VAs and freelancers on the platform, but our internal team was 30 people.
Wild. So you and a business partner and 30 VAs?
Yep. My partner, Connor Gillivant, follow him on LinkedIn if you're not already. He's awesome. And our developer, Russell, who we still work with to this day. And outside of that, it was all VAs in the Philippines.
Wild. That's awesome. And where did Russell come from? Did you say you found him on one of the platforms?
No, Russell was actually the developer on our Amazon business that helped us build the Phil website. Not anything his fault. He's a great developer. It's just a bad idea to invest the time and money to do that. So we got to know him and learned about development. And with Free Up, I mean, one of the things that helped us when we sold it is we had our own marketplace. We built it from scratch. It was an MVP. We got it out there. It did very little. It just tracked VA and freelancer time, and that was it. But by year 4, it did everything. It had the affiliate programs built in. It did payments automatically, new clients sign up, job boards, you name it. And when we sold it, that was a valuable piece of the sale because no one else had that software.
What caused you to sell it?
Yeah, so to kind of put it in perspective, this is 2019, so pre-COVID. We didn't enter the year saying, "Hey, we got to unload this thing," but we were making a good amount of money, super lean business, very cash positive, very profitable, and we kind of knew that there would be interest in selling it, but we loved the business and we loved our team. And one of our clients actually approached us and said, "Hey, we own a company called the Hoth. We have a conglomerate of businesses." Mark Hargrove, David Martin, 2 great entrepreneurs. We buy businesses. We don't start them. We want to get into the VA freelancer space. We use Free Up. We like Free Up. Would you guys be interested in talking about an acquisition? And like anything else, we heard them out, and they ended up making us a really good offer, life-changing money. And at the time, you're weighing a bunch of stuff. I mean, first of all, we had gotten this business to 12 million. To get it to 25 would have taken some pretty big structural changes. I don't know if we could have done it with just 30 VAs. Maybe we would have had to hire US people, and could have gone well, could have gone poorly. We also had seen what had happened with our previous business, the Amazon business, where things are going well and it can change quickly, and we had to lay a lot of people off, and we didn't want to go through that. We wanted to take a large percentage of the sale. I should say large percentage, but a good chunk of money from the sale, $500,000, and give it to our team in the Philippines and make sure they were taken care of. And could we sleep at night if we turned that money down and then drove the business into the ground? Again, pre-COVID, economy was at an all-time high. Real estate was looking good. Everything was looking good. So we thought, hey, it might be a good time to buy. A year from now, it might not look the same. And these were really good buyers. It was a cash offer. They knew what they were doing. They'd grown other businesses. We did due diligence on them. They took really good care of their team and their clients. So we didn't want anyone to sell it to someone who'd hurt our reputation. So all that was weighing in our mind. We kind of said, hey, if we're going to sell this thing, we got to make the best decision possible with the information we have. There can't be regrets. There can't be looking back. So that's what we did. We moved forward, making the best decision possible. And at the time, kind of crossing our fingers, and it all worked out. We couldn't have sold it to better people. They honored their word. They paid us every penny. They treated our team well. Our team still works there. Our reputation's still intact, hopefully, knock on wood. And yeah, it all kind of worked out. But the most stressful 6 months of my life by far.
So cash offers, I mean, you can structure purchases a million ways. And very often, entrepreneurs are pinned to the business and do not get the entire thing on the way out the door, right? It's not like, oh, we're going to buy your business, bye-bye, and they just take it from you. Usually there's some sort of earnout and some situation where you're expected to stay for a period of time. Were you on as an employee after the sale for any period of time?
Yeah, I shouldn't have said cash offer. There was a portion up front. There was an earnout, which we ended up getting all of it. But they were very successful entrepreneurs. They didn't have to get some huge bank loan or something. That's kind of what I meant by that. So yeah, so did we have to stay on? So we did not stay on. I did not want to. This is the advice I tell people because I have friends who are entrepreneurs who sold the company and became employees of that company and hated it and wanted out so quick. So for me, it was like, if we're selling it, we're done. We're moving on to something else. I think the agreement said 90 days. We were probably out of there in 40 days, and we were part-time pretty quick. So they've bought companies before. They know to get the founders out as quickly as possible. They had a good plan. They hired people. We were there if they had questions. And for the next few years, like here and there, they'd be like, hey, we want to make this change. We want to run it by you first and stuff like that. But we were out of there pretty quick, and that was that.
A lot of people, again, there are a million ways to sell a business. People that proactively tee things up to sell frequently talk about structuring things for the sale, looking at ways to amplify the value, and then go out and seek buyers. Do you have, and it sounds like for you, it was fortuitous, timing seemed to line up. and you took an opportunity. It was a bird in hand situation. Do you have any regrets about the exit? And is there anything that you would have done differently?
No, I don't have any regrets. I mean, there might be a world where maybe we could have gotten more money, but I'd rather get slightly less money and sell it to good people that I wasn't going to end up in like a lawsuit with down the line or arguing for years. Like there's a certain peace of mind that was good. And I mean, it was life-changing money. It kind of allows Connor and I to start businesses and like every entrepreneur, just try stuff and see if it works, see what works, what fails and all that. And it's a lot of fun. And it allowed me to buy a second house and move to Colorado and become foster parents and all the stuff that we were able to do. So no regrets there. I think we build our businesses to be sellable in the sense that they're very lean, they're cash flow positive, there's no office, there's no overhead, we hire a lot of VAs. So those are the kind of businesses that I think people like. And I think the biggest key, and I heard for 4 years that like I wouldn't be able to sell free up because I was the face of free up, but it's very easy for someone to come in with their own marketing team with a different marketing plan and get clients in a different way. I wasn't like running the operations. I wasn't doing the fulfillment. We had a great team that did that without me. And that's what people look for when they're buying. No one wants to buy a company where the owner is doing every single piece of fulfillment and really involved in the operation. So I think that was the key there. And the best advice I ever got was to do due diligence on the buyers, just like they were going to do it on us. And we wanted to know everything about them, their net worth, their success, their failures, how they treat people, their plans for free up. We want to know everything. And we kind of came to the conclusion that they had the same values as us. And like to their credit, so we sold it in November 2019. COVID hit like 5 months later. So it would have been very easy for them to be angry and, hey, you guys screwed me over and like blah, blah, blah. But they were like, hey, we made the best decision based on the information available. No one could have seen it. We're going to do the best we can to get through COVID, and no guarantees. We want to keep your legacy going. We want to pay you your earnout. We're going to do our best. And luckily they did. And free up's still running to this day. But like, those are the kind of people you want to sell it to. You don't want to sell it to people who are going to come after you over some obsolete thing. You want to sign a legal agreement, lock it in a safe, never look at it again. And if something comes up, talk it out like human beings and figure out a solution. And that's how I've always done business. So it was good to sell it to someone like that.
Somebody told me something a long time ago, which stuck with me. And it was, you should never marry somebody that you can't see yourself divorcing. And the sentiment is that you should never get involved in a relationship if you can't see a path for navigating the worst case scenario together. And I think that story of an exit and vetting the buyer is super relevant, and not just for an exit, but for any relationship you have in business, period.
I agree. I mean, my business partner, I tell people this all the time. It's easy to be business partners if you're making a lot of money and everything's going well. You really learn if you can work together when shit hits the fan and your Amazon account gets suspended or you make the wrong decision. Like all that stuff happens when you're an entrepreneur. So I think that the beauty of Connor and I and why I've been able to work well, we've kind of been through all these ups and downs. And when things aren't going well, we're able to stay focused and say, hey, we're not going to be homeless. It's a problem we got to solve. We're going to figure it out. And when things are going great, we say, hey, things are going well now. We got to keep the foot on the pedal and keep going. And there's going to be other problems that pop up. And that's tough to do.
It is. Yeah. It's one of the reasons that I like doing extreme athletic feats, because at some point in the journey, and it's not a question of if, it's when in the journey, is it going to go sideways? And are you going to be completely mentally and physically and emotionally exhausted and confronted with the reality of interacting with humans in that state? And the parallel is, of course, the Amazon account getting shut down, things going sideways. How do you confront each other as partners? Yeah, I love that. One of the things that you said when you were talking about the possibility of scaling between 12 and 25 million, taking it to the next level, was, hey, I'm not sure if we could do it, or if we did, I don't know if we could do it with 30 VAs in the Philippines. We might have had to start hiring US employees. And I love the notion of 3 people on your core team in the US and everybody else being outsourced. Like, that's a beautiful thing. As somebody that, well, I'll leave my own preferences aside. I think they've been well stated on this show in the past, but I think it's a beautiful thing. What is what is the difference for you? So in your head, when you say, hey, going from 12 to 25 might have required internal employees, what is it that full-time employees in-house offer you that VAs don't, or vice versa?
Yeah, it's less about that. I mean, so we've got like a full time U.S. controller for econ balance and accounts balance, and she's awesome and she's great, and she offers a different skill set than a lot of the Filipino bookkeepers that we have. I think my mentality from it was we might make less money short term in order to get to making more money, and you don't necessarily know you're going to get to making more money. Like there's companies that invest in growth, but they end up in a position where instead of being at 12 million with a great profit margin, they're at 18 million, but they're making less money than what they did at 12. And that was a real possibility because we would have had to hire way more expensive US employees. And maybe we could have figured it out and we made the wrong decision selling, and we could have gotten it to 50 million and be making way less money, maybe way more money, but there's always a possibility of the other way too. And we would have had to invest a lot more into infrastructure, and that would have cut down on the kind of the beauty of free up, the simplicity, the leanness, the flexibility that we had. So there would have had to just be drastic changes that came with their own risk. And if someone's offering you that money up front, you kind of have to weigh that versus the chances of you getting to that next level with a higher margin, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes total sense. And I think it's hilarious when drop shippers, e-com stores, et cetera, talk about their gross and the volume they did when I know that they're all ad driven running at like a 2% margin or
Right.
five.
You get it. Exactly.
Yeah, it's hilarious. But still, there's this seed in that sentiment that is higher quality talent is the in-house talent versus the VA. That's what I heard anyway. That was my mental takeaway, was I could pay more for higher quality talent to have in-house people, and that would allow us to accelerate growth, but it would compress margin, and then we'd be taking kind of a gamble on the future. Is that an accurate sentiment?
Yeah, very accurate. I mean, there are VAs that I'd put against any U.S. person out there, and there are VAs that they're VAs for a reason, and they serve a purpose, and we love working with them. But if we hired someone in the U.S., it would come with a much different skill set, and obviously cost a lot more.
Yeah. So skill set might be one of the reasons to go in-house versus outsource then from that perspective. Are there others? Do you think communication is better? Do you think it's easier to get a culture fit? What are the other things that would have allowed you to accelerate with a full-time in-house versus outsourced VA?
Yeah, I mean, we probably would have had to hire more high level developers to automate a lot of stuff if we really wanted to get scalable. That's part of it. We probably would have had to hire like a full time US manager at some point to kind of oversee more of the operation stuff. Yeah, there's different stuff like that. I mean, we focus on communication, so I think our VAs communicate at a very high level. If anyone here uses us for bookkeeping, like they talk one on one with our bookkeepers, they speak perfect English, they can explain stuff in a way that most entrepreneurs can understand. So I definitely think about it that way. But you're right. I mean, I think there's an expectation when you get to a certain size that someone can always talk to you as person, and that's not really what we offered at FreeUp.
It's an interesting question for me. It's an interesting discussion point because there's this illusion for, and maybe it's not an illusion, but there's a narrative out there for kind of the nomadic entrepreneur where everything is outsourced and they're living on their laptop in Bali. Most of those people do not make very much money. Most of them. Most of them have a lifestyle and post on Instagram and that's it. That's the gig. And you know what? Awesome. That's great. The only point of contention that I have there is purporting that that is a path to scale and that you are making a shitload of money doing that. And it's very rare. So I think it's for people that are running, 8, 9 figure companies or working towards that, the question of when you use a VA and when you don't is an important one. And you've clearly done a very good job of utilizing them and are a huge proponent. Um, are there roles in? So I like digging into this, but I want to go to the next chapter as well. But one of the takeaways that I'd like to hear are um, sort of delineating when you think people should use VAs and when you think they shouldn't. Are there certain roles that you think are relevant for entrepreneurs, or is it not role based? How do you approach which one you pick and when?
So I like to push the limits on what you can hire a VA for. For if anyone's in outsource school, I mean, we have SOPs on how to teach your VA to close clients and be salesmen. How to have VAs build your website or do development work, or do your SEO. Like you can push the limits. Now there's a expectation that I have where if you're doing anything for the first time, there's certain things you want to try before others. Like I always encourage people, let's say you want to go on podcasts. We have a podcast outreach formula. That's one of our most popular SOPs in outsource school. That's a pretty great place to start hiring a VA for. You're going to learn a lot. You're going to get comfortable working with someone in the Philippines. They don't get you on podcasts, you're going to be completely fine. Like those podcast hosts are going to forget who you are in a year. And so like starting small and building up is the way to go. Like hiring your first VA and making them a salesperson representing your company could work if you follow our SOPs, but there's a pretty big learning curve there. So Connor and I are very experienced doing that. And there's any role that comes up, we always think VA first. And if that's not possible, then we'll turn to the US. But that's because we've been doing it for 10 years and you want to kind of start somewhere. And that's kind of why after we sold FreeUp, we created Outsource School where it's like, hey, here's our process for interviewing, onboarding, training, and managing VAs, keeping them around, and plug that into your business. And then here's all of our SOPs from podcast outreach to customer service, which is a lot more training intensive, to sales, to lead generation, that you can kind of pick and choose where you're at and what you're comfortable with, and kind of over time input those SOPs into your business.
I like it. So what I heard was if you have a very structured role where there's a very clear SOP that you can hand off, that's a very good use case for a VA.
Yeah, there's 3 types of people you can hire. You got followers, doers, and experts. The followers are the VAs. They have years of experience, but they're there to follow your system, your process. If you don't have a sales process, a lead gen process, a customer service process, you can't just hire a VA and say, hey, go get me sales, go get me leads. They're there to follow your systems. The doers are the freelancers, graphic designers, writers. You're not teaching someone how to be a graphic designer, but they're not consulting with you there. They're there to do that one thing. They do that one thing 10 hours a day. And that's what you're using them for. And you're hiring them more project-based. And over time, the beauty of it is you can build a Rolodex of reliable people that whenever I need a website page or a graphic designer or a blog article, I don't have to post a job. I just have these people I've used in past companies that I can just go to. And then you got the experts, the high-level agencies, coaches, consultants that should be coming in with their own systems and processes. And as an entrepreneur, you can't learn everything. You can't take a course on everything. At some point, you're going to have to hire someone that is an expert in something you're not good at that can just come in and hit the ground running. So knowing before you make any hire whether you need an expert, a doer, or a follower is incredibly important.
And your hypothesis here is that the experts are easier to hire in a non-VA fashion.
I mean, experts kind of their own challenges hiring because it's tough to test people on something that you're not an expert in. And there's ways around that, like getting referrals. Like for bookkeepers, we have our CPA who can help us tell if a bookkeeper is good. So there's creative ways around that. But it's not necessarily, they all kind of come with their own pros and cons. They just need to be managed differently. Like a VA, the whole goal is to find out if they're good before you spend 2 months training them. You don't want to train them for 2 months and then realize they're not good. That's a bad use of time and money. For the expert, you want to make sure that they actually are an expert and that they have the same values before you sign on to their retainer or 6-month contract. And for doers, it's all about setting it up so that you've got different segments. You're not hiring someone to build a 20-page website and looking at it when they're done. You're having them do 1 page, giving them feedback, making sure that they can address feedback. Then you're giving them 2 more. So each one kind of has their own managing style that we go through in Outsource School.
That's a cool framework. Okay. So I guess before I close the FreeUp chapter, what was something you would have done differently in building a marketplace? What do you feel like you did not execute well and you would have taken a slightly different path on if you were to redo it?
So I'll give 2 things. One is kind of silly, but we ran the whole business on Skype, if you can imagine this. And Skype is not the best tool looking back on it. It's like laggy. We had a few times that our Skype accounts like got blocked and got unblocked, but it worked because we had clients on Skype and we had freelancers on Skype and we could connect them. But the second that the Hawk bought us, they got rid of Skype and moved everything to Slack. And now I love Slack and I use Slack on all my companies and would never go back. So that's kind of a silly one that if I could go back, I probably would have just done everything on Slack from day one. And the second one was just the software. I mean, I'm a big proponent of minimum viable product. I'm not a big risk taker, even though I'm an entrepreneur. Like I start my companies with $5,000 or less. I don't really invest into them until they prove that they can actually make money. But in this case, FreeUp probably would have grown faster if we had invested in software earlier, if we had had a bigger software budget in year 1, 2, or 3. Now, it could have gone sideways and I could have wasted a lot of money on software. And I've seen a lot of people do that where they spend $200,000 on software and then they realize there's no market for whatever it is they built. But in the FreeUp specific case, we probably could have invested more and had more functionality by the time we sold.
Yeah, that's an interesting conversation for people that have always done things with their own money and taken the bootstrap approach versus the funded community. And it's just a completely different mental outlook on how to grow a business. I've talked to many people on the show, but also just friends who communicate with me and say things like, "What's your burn rate?" I'm like, "You're not asking the right question, sir." I'm not negative. Um, so you close the free up chapter, which opens the doors to do something else. Entrepreneurs handle exits differently. Sometimes there's a crisis period afterwards. Sometimes they dive immediately into the next thing. I want to hear what you did, but I also want to hear obviously you went into a new business. What do you look for when you're starting a new business and how did you approach this transition?
Yeah, so we sold it in November 2019. The original plan was to take a year off and travel, and I had all these travel plans. I didn't think I'd see my business partner for a year. COVID hit shortly after that. So, very weird spot to be. We had no business to run. We were out of free up. We had no business ideas. We had just spent like 4 years focusing nothing on free up, and all our travel plans were canceled, and we were just stuck inside like everyone else. And at the same time, you're kind of wondering, hey, is free up going to go down? Like that's not a great place to take over a company right before COVID. So very, very weird place to be in. We started brainstorming ideas. A buddy of mine reached out and said, hey, you know what would go really well is if you taught people like your hiring process. And so we launched a course called Cracking the VA Code. If people hated it, we were just going to refund everyone. If people liked it, we were going to build it into Outsource School, and people liked it. And so we turned that into our membership. And that kind of bought us time over the next few years to just brainstorm a lot of bad business ideas before coming across bookkeeping. And for us, like we look for big markets. We never try to create a market. For every Uber that's a brand new market that no one thought existed, there's 1,000 others that people thought was a market but didn't really exist. So just like every entrepreneur needs to hire, every entrepreneur needs to do bookkeeping, whether they like it or not. We look for reoccurring revenue. That's a big thing. We look for like competitors and how good they are at marketing. A lot of bookkeepers are not good at marketing, not good at SEO, not good at a lot of stuff that we're good at. And we look for like, what else? Guess I'm blanking there, but like how like lean can we get it off the ground? Like what will it actually cost to go? Like I said, I like starting companies with $5,000, and I don't want something that's going to take a lot of software and stuff like that. So that's kind of the basis. And we've always loved finances, whether it's personal finances, business finances. We kind of went through our own journey with bookkeepers where we tried doing it ourselves, and we tried hiring college kids, and we tried dumping in our CPA at the year and then doing it quarterly, and then finally realized we need to do it monthly. And hiring a bookkeeper from day one of free up, one of the best decisions we ever made, because when we went to sell it, we had immaculate books going back to day one, and helped us make good decisions along the way. So we had a lot of just bad ideas over the next 2 years before coming across bookkeeping, and we really like the space, and it's been fun kind of doing something outside of the VA freelancer space.
Is it outside of the VA freelancer space? So you started with a course functionally on how to hire and train a VA, how to get the right VAs. And then you moved into Ecom Balance is the current venture, right?
Yeah.
And are you supplying bookkeeping VAs in that proposition, or what's the business model there?
No, so we have two bookkeeping companies, Accounts Balance and Ecom Balance. They both offer the same thing. We only do one thing, monthly bookkeeping. Charge you on the first, books by the 15th each month, income statement, balance sheet, cash flow, in an easy to read format for you to make decisions on. with great customer service around it. We don't do tax. We don't do consulting. You're not hiring like bookkeepers from us. It's a bookkeeping service. You're assigned a bookkeeper. They have a senior above them, a controller above that. And that's all we offer. So it's a little bit more of an agency model. It's definitely not a marketplace. And yeah, I mean, we use a lot of the stuff for hiring because we use that in all of our companies. But the bookkeepers you get, these aren't like VAs we taught bookkeeping. These are high level bookkeepers. We just hired a CPA equivalent in the Philippines to be one of the bookkeepers on our team. And it's a hybrid. We've got US bookkeepers as well. So it's not just the Philippines. It's kind of the best of both worlds, kind of fair pricing with a high level of service. That's what we shoot for. So of course, you take everything that you've learned in other businesses and apply them to current ones, but we're definitely not offering VAs.
Dig it. Yeah, that makes sense. But you're leveraging them as a part of the ecosystem.
Right.
Yep. I love it. Would you, so you kind of skirted around it. We got the story, but not how you think about it entirely. You gave me a couple things that you look for when starting a business, which was size of the marketplace, competitiveness of the marketplace, some other things that I'm forgetting.
I got more. We also want a business that's around, that we think is going to be around in 30 years. Now, you could always be wrong, and 30 years is a tough place to project. But in 30 years, I would guess people are still going to hire other people. In 30 years, I'm going to guess entrepreneurs are going to still do their own bookkeeping. So we try to avoid like fads, like any kind of, oh, it's COVID, like we can sell mass online. Like we avoid any of that. We want long-term businesses that we see will be there. So yeah, those are just some of the things that we look for. Yeah, I don't know if there's more to that question.
No, I mean, I think it's just a curiosity, is it? So, and I guess the direction, or one of my questions always as we start going down a path, or almost always, is, do you think that there was a divergent path that might have been interesting? Or obviously you're happy with the direction you're going, et cetera. Were there other ideas that were competing when you were thinking, hey, we're going to create the next business here?
Yeah, we had some e-commerce like product ideas that never took fruition. We had more like local business ideas because we're pretty good at like marketing SEO. So finding something boring, whether it's a bike shop or concrete or something that we could just be really good at marketing and find other fulfillment partners. And we still might do some of that stuff, but bookkeeping was the only one that we took a lot of action on. We do a lot of market research and anything before. So when we come up with an idea, we start reaching out to competitors. We start trying to talk to our ideal client. If you go to the Ecom Balance blog, you can see we interviewed 100 e-commerce sellers and published them to the blog, just asking them, hey, can you name 5 people in the space? What do you like about your bookkeeper? What do you hate? What do you think about bookkeeping? Like all sorts of different stuff to get information. And we had this idea for like a luggage business. We kind of did the same thing, but we never got past market research because we said, hey, we don't think there's a market, or it'd be too expensive to start or something like that. So we kind of follow a process where we look for something, see if it checks boxes, and we do a lot of brainstorming. We do market research. And then from there, we try to get the minimum viable product out there, usually by giving people free work. So with Free Up, we gave people free hours of VAs. With the Outsource school, we gave people a discount on the course. With Ecom Balance, we gave people 2 free months of bookkeeping to let us break everything and kind of be our guinea pigs. And if people don't stay on after that, then you don't really have a business. So it's a great way to prove that you can actually land clients. If I'm like, hey, 2 months free bookkeeping, 2 months free bookkeeping, and no one takes me up on that, or after 2 months they leave, that's a pretty good sign that you don't have a business. So, but you've also not wasted a ton of time and effort on it either. So that's kind of how we approach anything that we start.
That's great. Okay, I have to ask a question. One of the things that you said before we started recording was that you've been on 700 podcasts. Why are you on so many podcasts? What is and maybe it's just you enjoy it, but what's the goal for a podcast for you? Because today, by the way, getting on a podcast could serve, and maybe does serve, totally different purposes for people than it did when you started on podcast number 1. Because 700, unless you're doing one a day every day, we're talking years ago you started this.
Yeah, it's heavily skewed like at the beginning, right? So when just like timing, I always say timing's everything. And it's the same with Free Up. Like when I was on my first podcast for Free Up, there weren't that many podcasts. I got on Entrepreneur on Fire, and that kind of blew up, and it was like a big deal. And it was like a quick, easy way to network with people in the space. And a lot of the influencers had a podcast, and I would get in front of thousands of people at once, and I would just try to go on every e-commerce podcast. And I definitely overdid it. Like there was one week that I went on 5 podcasts a day for 5 days in a row. So I did 25 podcasts that week. And by Friday, I lost my voice and I didn't want to talk to anyone for the next week. So there's lessons from that as well. But I mean, for me, podcast is a great way to just get in front of your ideal audience, network. It's good for backlinking. It's good for SEO. It's good for getting your like sales pitch and just like talking points down, and sharing stories. And it's very relatable. So now I'm a little bit more picky. Like I try not to go on smaller podcasts. I'm going on paternity leave in a few weeks, so I won't be going on any podcasts for a bit. And I've had time since we sold Free Up where I'll take 6 months off from podcasts and stuff like that. So out of the 700, 500 of them are probably during the Free Up days or maybe early Outsource school days. But yeah, I still believe in going on podcasts. And I think if you're running a B2B business, it's a great way to build authority. And I mentioned we have the podcast outreach formula. If anyone Googles that a lot of people use my method for getting on podcasts. You can see the one pager that I send you and all hosts and plug that into your business. But I probably now I limit it. Like I don't do more than one podcast a day. I'm a little bit more picky. But I mean, podcasts were a big reason why we were able to scale Free Up.
Awesome. I love it, man. Well, I appreciate you carving out time. I think there's lots of tactical and strategic takeaways there. You have mentioned a few resources, but are there any other places you want to point people? Or if they want to find out about Nathan Hirsch or Ecom Balance or anything else, where should they go?
Yeah, follow me on LinkedIn. I post daily content every morning on the boring parts of business, hiring, bookkeeping, scaling companies. And go to outsourceschool.com. We got a free hiring packet you can grab and plug that into your business. If you go to Accounts Balance or ecombalance.com, we've got a lot of free resources. Our monthly finance agenda you can start running every week. We've got case studies, all sorts of different things. And appreciate you having me on. I'm pretty easy to find online. Feel free to reach out if you're listening. I love meeting other entrepreneurs.
Nathan, thanks so much, man.
Thanks.
Love it. I hope you enjoyed the episode as much as I enjoyed doing it. I need your help. There are 3 places you can find Beyond a Million. The podcast itself, beyondamillion.com, which has some cool free resources, including a free course. And we finally launched the Beyond a Million YouTube channel. I would love it if you would go there and subscribe. And if you don't want to, you still would probably enjoy seeing the visual content. Check it out, youtube.com/@Beyond a Million.